Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of On the Fly Casual Conversations around coaching youth lacrosse. I'm Martin Bose. I'm joined, as always, by the brilliant Joey Picard, and we have a special guest joining us today, Michael Lampert, who I'm excited to introduce to you all. Michael's a standout player from Wayland. That's where he played his youth lacrosse and high school lacrosse, where he was the leading point scorer. Graduated back in 2019. And went on to play his college ball at University of Denver, where he was a two-time All Big East selection and also was a captain his senior year. So we're really, really lucky to have you with us. He's also got great coaching experience, starting back from high school in the club lacrosse scene, as well as now full-time position working as a skills coach for Via Lacrosse. And so we have an awesome topic for you guys today. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's all around smiling, right, and bringing that joy to the game. And Michael, you're an awesome spokesperson for having that energy and bringing that joy to the game. So we thank you for joining us today. And I'll kick us off with a little icebreaker. And think about your experience. We have a lot of youth lacrosse coaches, of course, that listen to this podcast. And so as you reflect on your youth lacrosse days, what are some of your best memories, coming up in Wayland and playing youth lacrosse? And just tell us a little bit about the roots of your story.
Yeah, no, well, first, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm fired up to be here. I think for me, when I, reflect on my youth lacrosse experience, everyone in my neighborhood was playing, all my friends were playing, so it was like, if we would have a 3 p.m. practice, like, we'd all get there at noon or 1 and toss the ball around, get some extra shots up. And we really connected well with the high schoolers at the time, so like the high schoolers would always roll us ground balls or feed us when we were shooting. And I think that was awesome. Like one of my best friends to this day, my next door neighbor, Kyle Miller, we'd walk to the high school, bike to the high school for practice and just hang out for a couple, 2.5, 3 hours before practice actually started. And, and just seeing the older guys there, the high schoolers there that were, super welcoming and wanted us to, love the game just like they did is something that I think was super special.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you really centered around kind of the relationships, and we see that as a common theme where if coaches have the ability to include high school players at their youth practices, man, it's such a great hack. For some reason at the youth level, the high school age just seems like this. They're kind of the heroes of these kids,
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really low-hanging fruit for coaches to really do their best. Sometimes it's great to get the high school coach involved, and you'll need to really execute on this. But those high school kids spending time with the youth kids, just like you're alluding to, creates an awesome experience. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like I think like town pride is like super important. And I think when you're a youth kid, even when I was playing Pop Warner, it was like the quarterback was like the Superman in all my buddies' opinions, and the star attackman was, I would always say like, "What's up, dude?" Like I was just super excited to go say hello. And I think if you can build those relationships, like that's what builds a strong community. And can lead for success down the road.
What I loved hearing you talk about was that kind of moment before practice, and for you, it was hours, which is amazing.
Yeah.
We as coaches talk so much about how important it is to work outside of practice. The kids playing wall ball or, finding a parent to throw with in the backyard. But when kids come together to do it, I feel like they push each other more. It's almost like a game of horse breaks out. Like, oh, I can do that. Watch me do it behind the back or watch me do it around the world. And as fun as that is, you're not only building camaraderie by having that, like, and I got kids who do it too. They show up early, they stay late. The parents get annoyed because it's like, no, come on, it's time to go. But the kids just want to keep that going. But you're really not only strengthening your team bonds, but I think that they're competing in a way that kind of pushes each other in the best possible way. So I totally loved hearing you say that. And I think some of the best teams I've seen that are youth have that. Hey, it says on paper practice is 75 minutes, but it's 2 hours for us because we like to come early and stay late, which is awesome.
I think that was probably the first time too where I saw what a behind the back shot was. So it's like if you look at the game, today it's a creative game, and so it all starts with sort of freestyle in the backyard or on the turf before or after practice.
So we're really excited to have you join us at our annual New England Youth Lacrosse Convention coming up here. And so I know that you'll be speaking on, the topic is kind of the smile factor. And I'm just curious to kind of get a little bit of background as to when did that sort of become important for you? Was there a catalyst? Is there a coach in mind that kind of
Yeah.
something clicked and you were like, oh, like this is actually kind of the core of, why lacrosse is so special to me and why, yeah, just give us a little background of the smile factor and where that came from.
Yeah, I think it started honestly at a young age. I was super into sports. Football was honestly probably my first sport when I was a youth. But then as everyone started to get bigger and I didn't, and that's when I sort of turned. That's when I sort of turned to, lacrosse being my quote unquote main sport. But, I was, always an active kid, didn't really enjoy school and didn't have much success in the classroom that a bunch of my buddies did. So I found a lot of joy and happiness, on the field. And so I think as I got older, especially in college, playing for Coach T and Coach Brown, for from the outside, they're these hard coaches, strict, demand a lot, which is true. But they wanted us to have fun. They wanted us. As soon as you enter the locker room, it's like everything that's happening, whether school was hard, you have a relationship issue going on, it's like that's the time where you can be yourself and enjoy being with your best friends. And at the end of the day, you're going out there to play lacrosse, and you should enjoy that 2.5 hours while you have it.
You're kind of taking us through from, youth all the way to college and that experience with the college coach. And I love that because I think that that's a misused, or not a misused, but a underused tactic for coaches in general, is to kind of create that moment of groundedness at the beginning. And really what you're saying is there's a level of perspective that comes along with
Hmm.
understanding, like, hey, these other parts of our lives, the stress of work or class or relationships or whatever else is going on outside of lacrosse can now kind of, matter a little less for the next 2 hours. And we
Yeah.
can really just focus on enjoying that time together. And that's how you get the most out of it, right? And I really, really encourage coaches out there, especially at the youth level, where if we just kind of get into the first drill, it's really easy for whatever else is going on in these kids and young boys and girls' lives to start to just ripple into what we're trying to do on the lacrosse field. And so that makes a lot of sense, and it's profound, I think, for someone like yourself who's gone all the way through. And now, as I didn't mention in my intro for you, is as a professional lacrosse player now signed with the Philly Water Dogs, it's like you get to see all the different progressions as a player of what's the messaging that these coaches are giving
Hmm.
me and what's really resonating with me. And maybe you're noticing what's resonating with, your teammates who have different levels of ambition and
Yeah.
personalities. And so, yeah, I feel like it's worth kind of giving a shout out to that concept of,
Yeah.
hey, take time at the beginning and bring everybody in of like, hey, you know how lucky we are to be, like, let's get excited about this, for the next, for a lot of youth coaches, it's only 60 minutes, maybe
Yeah.
75 minutes of like, this is valuable time, and let's do our best to really be where our feet are, right?
Yeah, and I think it helps you buy in. Like I'll never forget. Like I was having a really tough game in college, and Coach Brown pulled me aside and gave me a simple hug and just said, "I believe in you." It was during a timeout. Immediately lit up and was like, "Let's go." And so like it does trickle into your confidence and how you perform in that game. Is like if I'm when I look back my college and high school career, the games that I didn't necessarily play well in, probably wasn't having much fun. But the games where I was, smiling ear to ear and just getting fired up for my teammates and everything like that, like it just trickles down to your individual success. And so I think, it's interesting. And now that I'm coaching, like I really try to make it like a point of emphasis of like I gotta get the kids smiling the second they walk in the door. Like from if I can do that within 30 to 45 seconds, like I know it's going to be a solid hour. If I can't, then I know it's going to be a little bit harder. But, now that I'm coaching, like that's my true goal is like I want that kid to leave here, go back to his mom or dad's car and be like, I had so much fun. Like I can't wait to go back next week.
So, Michael, thinking back on those games where you acknowledge now that you really weren't having all that much fun, do you think those are internal pressures you put on yourself that you weren't performing, you weren't hitting your milestones and goals? Or was it from a coach or a general manager or someone else, or maybe the culture of the team put that kind of pressure on you to make sure that you were tight and not enjoying it so much? Talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, no. I think it was definitely on myself, whether I was, in my head too much about, what my individual matchup would be that game, or if I was getting locked off, or, hard time getting the ball. Just little stuff like that can trickle down, and it makes you grip your stick a little too tight, and you kind of start second guessing everything, and you just lose the joy. But then, once you have that teammate reel you in, or that coach reel you in, then you kind of just feel like loose again. It's like start from scratch. Yeah, so I think it's important that you either have, a peer, a teammate pull you back in, or a coach, give you a hug, give you a pat on the helmet and say, you got this. So, yeah.
It's a great example you gave, this story of this coach giving you a hug, and I think you're kind of like centering on like the positive aspect of it. But what I'm thinking as a coach is I'm like, well, he must have saw something in you, whether it was something in your eyes or in your body language. He was like, oh, that kid could really use a hug and a little boost right now. And now that you're kind of getting into this other side of the game and you spent some time coaching and now you've got some experience there, I'm wondering, is there signs that you look for, or are there techniques even that have been helpful for you where, maybe it is one of those days where, like, he came in or she came into this session and they kind of put their head down and they have this different way about them. This is going to be a challenge for me to bring the joy out of them. What has worked for you, or what are any, what's some principles that you think about to, try to keep that as your North Star, as you're alluding to?
Yeah. I think, sometimes it can be pretty obvious, like if the kid comes in with his head down, or if she comes in with her head down. But, sometimes they come into the session really happy, but they drop a few passes, or they miss a few shots, and then all of a sudden it's like the end of the world. And then, like, whenever they catch that next ball, or they hit that next shot, like, I'll stop and just be like celebrate that. Like, I have a thing in my sessions now where it's like, if I'm working with a kid, let's say he or she, she's having trouble in, or he's having trouble in catching the ball, I'll be like, let's just focus on getting 5 catches in a row, right? Then immediately he or she will get 5 catches in a row. Then we'll stop, give him a high five. It's like, now let's get 6. Or if they're having an off day shooting, it's like the second they hit that top left target, it's like I demand an immediate celebration of, like, bring that joy just back to life. And it's like it's pretty impressive. Like, we've all been there. It's like the second that you have like a positive, or you hit that shot, you catch that ball, it's like you feel like a new player in that moment. And then if the session's just, if I can feel the energy's low, I'll open it up with some jokes, and I'll just get the kid laughing, even if he thinks I'm weird. I'll just get him laughing. And I think that's
But he
important.
definitely
Like,
thinks you're weird.
yeah, so it's like, it's not just about, these kids getting better at lacrosse. Yes, that's important. We all know that, but like, we're trying to bring the love to the game, that we're trying to bring love, that we have of this game to the kids. And, if we put too much pressure on them, or if it feels too much like a job, like it's, they're just going to slowly fizzle out. And unfortunately, I think that's happening, and I've seen it happen. And I think, there's a lot of pressure on kids these days when it comes to athletics, no matter what sport you're playing. So I think for coaches, for me, yes, do I want the kids to get better? 100%. But I also want the kids to love the game and keep coming back. And so I think, especially at the youth level, like, that's the number one important thing. Like, is it cool if you can hit the top left corner 4 times in a row? Yes, obviously. But do I want you smiling? Do I want you loving lacrosse? Like, for me, that's why I still play. That's why I coach. Like, I just simply love the game. And I think, the more we can have kids find that joy, like, I think that's, going to be important for the game moving forward.
One of the things I was going to say, and I think it piggybacks really nicely on what you were alluding to, Martin, was coaches. There's a lot of us who kind of have this baseline of, I'm low key. I create an environment where mistakes are totally fine and we're going to have fun, and then the pressure's off. Let's enjoy it, especially at the youth, especially town version of youth. But there's still work that needs to be done. You can have all of that, but then you have a player, and Michael, you're an example of it. You put your own internal pressures on. So maybe the coach isn't responsible, but you have your goals and your own bar that you set. You drop a couple of passes. It's important then that the coaches, and we talked about this, Martin, earlier with Coach Gugino, that social, that emotional intelligence of picking up when some kids are down because of that. Some kids might be neutral and you can't tell, but it requires some work to check in with them, constant positive reinforcement, constant goal to get them to smile. And I do this all the time. Brush it off. Let's go. Next rep. So you can't just say, oh, my culture is great. We're good. You have to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a big challenge, right? Is managing essentially players' expectations, of they think they're going to catch it or they think they're supposed to hit the thing and they don't do it. And all of a sudden their head's in a spiral. And I think it'll be interesting to get your perspective, Michael, now that you've had a lot of experiences, not only coaching players, but having interactions with players' parents. And I think that what you were starting to, make a good point on earlier around burnout and is the kid really the one driving the train or the bus, or is the parent kind of forcing this high level ambition on them? And we don't need to get too far into like what to do around that, but I'm more so just curious, like, do you have any examples of situations that have come up where maybe you can tell there's a little bit of tension between what the goal of the player is, what the goal of the parent is, and knowing that the best true North Star is to enjoy the process and to have fun with this and not take it too seriously, yet still find that balance of let's work, let's get better, and let's try to be our best, but in the context of love as opposed to trying to prove something to someone else, right?
Yeah, it's tough, like especially with the job that I have now, and I'm with skills coaching and skills development. I've talked to a lot of parents, and it's like regarding their third or fourth or fifth grade son or daughter, and it's like they need to work on A, B, C, and D, and I'm like, I can understand that, but at the end of the day, he's in fourth grade. What he needs to do is like want to be here. He wants to like he needs to be able to like go out and run around with his friends and throw the ball around and play basketball, play football, like whatever the case may be. It's not about, he needs to develop his left hand. He's not confident going to the goal. Like he's having a hard time catching on the crease. It's like, yeah, but that comes like naturally with age development and confidence and stuff like that. And it's like, I think there's just too much pressure, whether it's, within the families or outside world. It's like, I'll have some kids being like, yep, I have you today at 3, then I have club practice, and then I have football after this, and then I have hockey tomorrow. And I'm like, that's just too much. Like, two lacrosse practices in one day is insane for a fourth grader. Like that, like I didn't have that. I would do Wayland Youth Lacrosse, and then I'd go home and I'd ride my bike until 8 p.m. and then I'd have dinner and go to bed. So it's tough where, I think these families are seeing other families, doing club 4 times a week. So my kids got to do it 5 times a week. It's like, it's this weird one-up process that I'm seeing of, obviously parents want their kids to succeed in whatever field it may be. But, I think it's tough because I feel like the love is just being taken out of it, and the natural development process is being taken out of it because there's a lot of pressure, doing 3 lacrosse sessions a night or 5 a week, whatever the case may be. It's like, I just feel like it's too much, and it's hard to tell the parents that sometimes because I'm not living in the household, and, who am I to say how to run, the ship. But, I have had some conversations where it's like, hey, like I see, a path that maybe he's getting burnt out. Like, I think we could taper back a little bit and sort of, have him naturally find his love again for the game. So it's tough. I've been put in some situations where, I felt like I should speak up, and I have, and other times where I've kind of sat back and kind of let it play out. But it's tough, man. I just think these kids are going through, a weird amount of pressure that just doesn't feel natural when you're in third
It is
grade.
tough. It's hard to do, but it's so important to do because, as you just said, the parents are almost in this kind of one-up stage with one another. So they're really only communicating on the sideline. So I think they need to hear from coaches, from town directors, from program directors, either in writing or having these meetings or one-on-one conversations saying, let's seriously put this into perspective. Your child, is not making the varsity team captaincy today in 5th grade based on how many nights a week they're going to work. They're going to get there eventually, and how seriously they take their off practice regimen, how much work they put into it. But as we're talking about in this episode, how much they enjoy this sport, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a scientific study, but there has been one that I've read from the University of Montreal that links, enjoying something and having
Yep.
success with it. You do better when it's something you look forward to. Now, there's obviously anomalies to that. There are people who are naturally gifted and they just hate it. But for the most part, it's people who are kind of coming in here and enjoying the time, the work that goes into it, the mental prep that goes into it, the physical toil. They tend to have the most amount of success. And again, we're talking about youth here. So someone who's an absolute stud at fifth grade fizzles out. And someone who showed up to jeans, practice with jeans on in eighth grade, all of a sudden they turn out to be an All-American. Everyone develops at such a different rate. As youth coaches, we need to be laser focused on let's get them and let's keep them and let's make sure they want to come back next year. That's like the beginning and end of our to-do list.
And I'll tell you, when I was growing up in my house, it was town came first. So when it was fall and I was playing Pop Warner, Michael, you're playing Pop Warner. In the winter, I was wrestling or playing basketball. That's what you were doing. And then in the springtime when lacrosse came, like that's when I sort of blossomed and I was like, Dad, like I really love lacrosse more than football and whatever the case may be. And he was like, okay, you're still going to play football, but if you want to do extra lacrosse in the fall, I can't hear any complaints from you when you have that practice after football. And so for me, it was like and this was when I was older too. I was like probably going into high school at this point when I was like really wanting to play club because I was like, I want to play lacrosse in college. So for me, it was like there was no parental pressure. Like my dad was like, if you want to do it, I'll help you do it and we'll figure out a way to do it. But there was no like, Jimmy down the roads playing for 3D, like you have to do this, you have to do that. It was all up to me and my older brother. So it was on us to be like, we want to do more lacrosse. But, with that, we had to do our town stuff as well. And that had to come first.
Marty, do me a favor. I know we have some really great loyal listeners who've been with us for every episode, so this will be a repeat. But will you retell your anecdote about how the connection between the parents who kind of say so little and support, just as Michael's dad was, and how much success comes with that as opposed to like the joystick parents, those who are controlling every little thing and saying, you're going to do this, this, and this.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll kind of use that to finish this thought, which is you're talking about one of the main challenges that I see coaches and really program directors face, which is how to manage that relationship with the parents. I think to summarize what you're saying is the challenge really is to help reframe success for parents. And we've had an entire episode on this, and I think what I'm understanding from you is that the measure of success is kind of rooted in how much they want to be there. Are they enthusiastic? Are they having fun with this? Is there joy at the center of their experience? And the left hand dominant versus the shooting on the run accuracy, it's like, man, that is so secondary to like them as a human being really enjoying being there. And I think just to emphasize that is our challenge, is one of our main challenges as coaches, is to manage the relationship with the parents in the context of how they're framing success for their kids and for our team. And it's just such an important conversation. And, Joey, what you're referring to is parental communication during games being what the center of the study is around. And what they found was that parents who were the calmest, who basically said the least during games, were found to be the most helpful to their athletes finding success in their given field. And it's just like, okay, so what's another way to say that? If you're yelling from the sidelines, it's actually a detriment to your kid.
Yep.
And the reason behind that is because for us, if us being for athletes rather that are experiencing a game scenario, to see and hear what's going on in the game, and then to add in the audio of, oh, my parents yelling at me to go shoot it. Maybe they listen and go shoot it. Maybe they don't because they don't understand, or maybe they don't because they're defiant and they're like, screw you. It's just, it adds this whole layer of thinking that doesn't need to be there at all. And it puts this stress on the athletes. And so, yeah, it's a great reminder of like, hey, if we have parents that are flexible in how they're going to behave and they're open to getting coached of like, how can I be a better parent from the sidelines? Well, let your kids make their own decisions and center the framework of success around enthusiasm and joy of being there. I think that's kind of really what we're getting at here is let's reframe how we get, like, what are we the most excited about? We should be excited about their own enthusiasm, and then like bouncing back from mistakes, like you alluded to earlier, of like we can celebrate when they're like continuing to give effort even if the result isn't what they wanted,
Yep.
which I think is profound for athletes to feel that support from their parents in that way.
Michael, let me ask you this. A lot of the times what we've been talking about is creating fun games at practice, and that kind of gets especially geared towards kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth. We just did a whole episode on some of our favorite like games at the end, sharks and minnows, red light, green light, relay races. How do you do that for older teams? How do we do that for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? How do we keep it light and fun and add elements? Because it's hard to look at a group of 7th and 8th graders and say, hey, purple light's a dance party. They're going to look at you like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tough, but you have to understand, and I've now like figured this out of like now like I train or I coach all age groups, so it's like 3 p.m. today I might have two third graders and then boom I'll have high schoolers. They're still kids. Like you can come in with the same approach, you just kind of got to phrase it differently. Where it's like if I'm playing pig with two third graders, their eyes are just going to light up because we're playing pig and we're aiming for a crossbar, corners, doing behind the legs, and then like behind the back into the between the legs. If you're doing it with high schoolers, you just got to frame it as in like, okay, like you guys are getting older. Like accuracy is like what's going to help you perform better in games, and what the case may be. So it just comes down to how you frame it. But like when I coach at camps and clinics and whatnot, you can still do all these fun games that you can do with, third and fourth graders. You just got to frame it a little bit differently, maybe adjust here and there. But I love still, like when I was doing camps going into high school, I loved all of the fun part about doing all of these drills and stuff like that. And I think seventh grade is a little tough because these kids are like, thinking they're cool and going into high school soon. You just gotta phrase it a little bit differently than you would to a second or third grader. But I still think you can do, sharks and minnows and all that stuff. You just gotta be like, now we just really gotta focus on stick protection here. Just stuff like that and how you frame it. But I think you can absolutely still do all of the fun stuff.
Absolutely. I used to do at the end of my 3rd and 4th grade practices, like musical chairs, ground balls, right? So you
Yeah.
create a little scarcity and they're always fighting for it. And it's a big thing at the end to do it. And then as the 5th, 6th, and 7th and 8th graders are kind of in the hallways getting their gear on, they're looking and they're going, well, can we do that? And the answer is,
Yeah.
heck yeah, we're going to do it. And it's going to be at a higher level. And it's going to be tougher ground ball battles. But sure enough, they just want to compete. And so these are all games that sound like, oh, we're just having relay and, we're having recess rather. But there's still a huge lacrosse benefit to this,
Yeah.
to going up and having musical chairs, ground balls for 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah. It's like even in the PLO practice, like you're still doing ground ball drills like you did when you were in third grade. There's just more intent to it and there's more purpose behind it. But you're still doing the same thing you were doing when you were 7. There's just, a little more edge and purpose to it, but you still have that joy in that fun that you did when you were in third grade. So you just gotta be able to adjust on the fly a little bit and figure out how to word it. But no, I love doing stuff like that with my kids, and that's when the smile factor comes out of like this is why I wanted to come to lacrosse practice. So I love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
We all want to play games, right?
Yep,
And
we
I
do.
think, yeah, and you're kind of saying that regardless of age, we can do the same stuff. And for the older age groups, let's say the 7th and 8th graders, for our listeners, you're able to add more context, right? So instead of just shooting down the alley, you're going to shoot down the alley while someone chases you and tries to lift check you, to add that level of pressure and to make it feel like a little bit more of a challenge. It's still the same skill, right? But you're able to add more of that context for the older groups. And that can be a helpful reminder for coaches of like, hey, how can we make this feel like a game? Because it's like that becomes your whole coaching strategy when you're coaching K through 2s. Is like, okay, if it's not a game, I lose everybody. No one's paying attention. By the time they're 5th, 6th grade, it's like, oh, we want to like learn real lacrosse. We want this to feel like a game, a scrimmage rather, like a lacrosse scrimmage. And there's just so many layers in between a drill and like a full field scrimmage where coaches really shouldn't be spending too much time, in my opinion, full field scrimmaging at practice. It should be smaller sided where you get higher repetitions at a given skill set that you're trying to focus on. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's never a bad time to try to make something feel like a game.
Yeah. Like something that I've started to do, with my kids in my sessions is, especially on the older end, like when I can feel they're kind of like I'm getting a little bored, we're just, shooting in whatever the case may be. Like that's when like it's like, okay, I'm gonna put this into a game perspective for them. So it's like I'll be the one standing at X, and I'm like, if I'm dodging, to your side, like what would you be thinking right now if this was a game? Like how would you drift into your cut? So it's like just putting yourself into a game scenario sometimes for these kids, like brings that joy back out of like, yes, like I can totally see me doing that in a game. So just like little tweaks and little things like that can help the kids sort of liven up again and get that smile factor.
So, Michael, would that be a one-on-one conversation, or would you try to bring the whole group in and say, "Hey, everybody, let's take a deep breath. Let's calm down. Let's put it into a game perspective. This is what's
Yeah,
happening. Let's talk it through a little bit."
it could be both if it's a smaller group, or you can sort of bring the whole group together. Like this past Saturday, I gave, the kids a specific game example of like, if you're a righty dominant player, not you don't always want to catch left and put it to your right every time. Like sometimes you just want to catch it with your strong hand and let it fly. And so I, used, the other two coaches that we had, and I gave them like a little triangle 3-man rotation like scenario of like, this is why you would want to keep your stick in your right dominant hand here instead of catching lefty and switching to your right. And they were like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like I would totally do that." And it's like you saw the entire group like lift up and liven up, and it's like those next round of shots like were just that much better, not because of accuracy, but just because of like they were into it. So
They had a purpose to it, right?
yeah,
It wasn't
purpose to
just
it.
running
Yeah,
through a skill
yeah,
set. There's a reason for we're trying to translate it into game success. Why I love doing it in a small group session is because I like to try to lead the horse to the water and see if it drinks. I like to ask somebody else, does anyone else know why we're going to do that with the right hand here, and see if we can pull it from them. I feel like that self-efficacy of having them figuring it out is more impactful. But as a coach, we're prepared if you just get blank stares to say, okay, here's from it from my perspective. But if they can be the ones to kind of figure it out, light bulb, I think that's more long lasting too.
So, Michael, I have a question around your experience with coaches that you've had in your career. So maybe it's a youth level coach. It could even be from another sport. Let's say I know you had Coach Marcus Cregwell at the high school level. Shout out to Coach Cregwell, and of course at Denver, Coach T. And so my question is, from the coaches that you had in your journey, what was something they did or said that changed the way you understand the game? I know it's kind of a vague question, but
mm,
basically, is there a moment that you remember from a coach of like, once he explained this, something clicked or the game slowed down for me, just to think from, okay, what was that? Who was the coach,
yeah.
and kind of what did they teach you that
Ooh,
really changed your
yeah,
perspective?
yeah. And I've been, no matter the sport, I've been blessed with just unbelievable coaches, whether it was high school football, wrestling, lacrosse, college lacrosse. But I think for me, it was my senior year of college. We had a new offensive coordinator, Dave Metzbauer, came from North Carolina. And I was coming off, I had surgery in the summer going into my senior year, so I missed majority of fall ball. And I was really, as you guys know, stressed about, oh, is my playing time gonna get cut in half? Like I'm just really, anxious about my senior season. And as we came back after Christmas break and New Year's, he pulled me into the office and just was and had my film up of my junior year. And I was like, okay, this is kind of odd, but I'm willing to sit here and see where this goes. And we were talking about the upcoming season, how he thinks I fit the puzzle within the offense. And it was just, he clipped a couple of videos from my junior season and was like, this is what we need from you this year, and this is why I believe you can do that to help this team win. And we literally went through a bullet point of just my role and how I can help the team win and why he believes, that's the best position for me, right? That's what matters is like, A coach, no matter how old you are or what level you are, a coach that says, I believe in you and this is where I think you can help the team win, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like I know I believe in myself, but now that I hear you say that you believe in me, it's like thank you. It's like I cannot wait now to get to practice and like prove you right and continue to work together in order to help the team win. So I would definitely say Dave Metzbauer, my senior year at the University of Denver, really sort of brought out that joy and just we had a great relationship, no doubt. But I think it all comes from just trust. Like he trusted me, I
Right.
trusted him, and it showed on the field within our game plan. And it was just such a good experience my senior year. But having Coach Metzbauer be a part of that
I
was
love it.
definitely something
Yeah,
special.
that's a great answer. And I'm trying to, I think there's something really, really simple that youth coaches can pull from that story. That level of detail around like having film pulled up and sort of having bullet points of like, okay, here are the things I want you to focus on. Obviously, we
Yeah,
can't expect youth coaches to do that. However, what I'm pulling from that I think any coach can pull is we should be focused on helping athletes find their strengths and emphasizing
yeah,
those strengths and um, you know creating that bond of like, hey, I know you can hustle out and create a challenging matchup for people who have the ball because I see you hustling on defense, or hey, I've seen you just sprint full speed down the righty alley and shoot, like more of that. And I think
yeah,
we can make the mistake of coaches of like, ooh, I don't like that. Oh, no, don't do it that way. No, you got to cut this way. And it's all a correction as opposed to let's just be scanning for finding the good, right? Find those strengths in our athletes, find what makes them tick to some degree, understanding their personality, so that when you do
yeah,
communicate with them, it's in a positive manner, and it's really about feeding the good wolf, right? It's about emphasizing what's good, and that's naturally going to strengthen what's good, as opposed to trying to beat down what's bad and trying to correct. It's a common mistake I see coaches make, and I think at the youth level this is incredibly profound for kids.
yeah,
If like they feel like they did this wrong, they did that wrong, because they know they've been coached on it before, and the coach calls them over and they're like, dude, I saw you sprint after that ground ball. I know you didn't get it, but you had some speed
yeah,
there. You keep running like
yeah,
that, you're going to make more plays. And it's just those little moments that I think can be really helpful for youth coaches.
yeah. And I think, that's a great point, but it all starts from trust. It's like it's pretty easy for a coach to just show up for 60 minutes, throw a couple drills together, throw a couple balls, roll a couple GBs, but it's like if you pull 3 kids aside and then the next practice you pull 4 kids aside, now there's 7 kids that trust you and want to come back and want to play for you. So it's like that makes a huge difference. Like it's very easy to yell at Johnny about not shooting underhand or like whatever the case
Did you
may
ever
be.
did
But
you ever
it's
hear
like,
that in your career, Mikey?
oh yeah, not shooting underhand. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't understand that one, but yeah, it all comes from trust. Like it's if you can get 7 kids to trust you one day, and then you get one the next day. Now that's 8 kids. Then you get 9. It's like that's when a team forms. Right? A team isn't going to form if they don't like the coach or if they don't trust the coach or whatever the case may be. It's like it all stems from good communication and good trust.
So I think that's such an important tool for a coach to have in their belt, is the ability to tell kids, I believe in you, I trust you. That's so impactful, that, as you mentioned from firsthand experience, hearing. Something else that I've heard and I try to use as well, I was watching a basketball game on TV, and it was during a free throw, and the arena was silent, so you could hear a pin drop. And right before the kid shot it, the coach yelled out, believe in yourself. And for me, that was like, oh, I love that. And so I do that myself. I try to say that. So when you also get the kid to not only hear, I believe in you, but have that confidence to believe in yourself, you can do this. I think that's a great way to kind of sandwich that as well. So that's another thing we can also say to
Yeah,
them. You have my trust, but I want you to find a way to trust yourself as well.
definitely, definitely.
We just talked about it. What I loved is you both mentioned it, very, very specific. here's your role, or this is where I see you are, this is what you can contribute. I
Mm,
think it takes the pressure off of you have to be great at every aspect of this somewhat complex game. There's a lot of elements to it. But
yep.
if you can kind of narrow it in, especially for a youth player, and say, hey, this is an area you can absolutely be an immediate impact if you just focus on that. That's a very attainable goal for a kid to sit there and be like, you know what, I can do that. Yeah, this can be my role. It doesn't have to be the only thing that I'm going to contribute to. But if my job here in this offense is to clear through for the Dodgers, and I make that kind of a point of emphasis on the next 3 reps, for example, boy, you just created some great team chemistry and kids who believe in themselves. So I love that you both said the same thing is, give them specifics to look for.
Yeah, like everyone's different. Everyone has, is blessed with different things. Like I can't shoot the ball like Brennan O'Neill, but I can run. So I know I bring a speed aspect and a dodging threat to my team. So it's like the sooner a coach can pull out a strength of a kid and tell tell him that to his face, like that's when light bulbs start to turn on, and it's like, ooh, like now I know I can do this. Like I thought I could, but like hearing my coach say that now it's like, now I really know I can do that.
Love it. Yeah, I think one more point I would want to make around this trust factor is I think it's probably the key to you called it creating buy-in, right? To have the whole group be bought in. I mean, that is maybe what coaches could center their success around as well, of like, is the whole group excited, about this? Are they cheering each other on? I know that's a huge skill set of yours, Mikey. Like you're
Hmm.
someone who you pass it, you want to get someone else a point. You want to include others. You're going to celebrate other people's successes. And when coaches are sort of evaluating how to spend their time, in the process of practice planning, you have to include the evaluation of sort of the personalities of your group to some degree. What are they going to respond to?
Yeah.
And it can be helpful for coaches to put things in context of sort of like bought in factor. If you've got a group of 20 kids, the 5 kids that are the most bought in are sort of the easiest to coach. The 5 kids that are the least bought in can be the most frustrating. They're causing distractions.
Hmm.
They're checked out, or whatever the case may be. And I think maybe one of the challenges that coaches could accept is like, hey, if I can build trust with those least bought in players of my group, that's my ticket to getting them more excited for other people's success. That's my ticket to getting them to show up with a little bit more enthusiasm on a given day. I love that you're kind of making that the framework of like joy and trust are really at the center of this, and it's not soft. It's actually going to create a much better experience for everybody. We're gonna win more
Yeah.
games if we all are
Yeah.
bought in and trusting and doing this out of love instead of, again, trying to prove something, or trying to be the best versus someone else, as opposed to I just want to be the best
Yeah.
I can be, because that brings the joy, and that's the center. And yeah, I just think youth coaches unknowingly step into that arena because oh yeah, I can roll a couple balls out of practice, no problem, I can be there, and all of a sudden they're giving life lessons on the sideline. It's like, wait, what did I sign up for?
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe we could wrap this up and just I would pose a question to you as you're thinking about the smile factor and why it's important to you, and we've pulled out a lot of good points here. But is there anything that you would add on, or something that we missed as far as what coaches can be thinking about to either center their own coaching around this or help athletes have more fun?
Yeah. I think, we talked about the building trust aspect. But there's also kids out there, and I was sort of one included. Like I did enjoy when my coach would pull me aside and tell me to believe in me, but I also did enjoy, that tough love a little bit. And I think you have to be able to do both. You can't do it to the whole group, I think, at the youth level, but when kids a little deeper, and it's like, like I know Matt and John can take a little bit of tough love. Like it's going to make them better, right? They want that. I think you have to be able to do both, right? I mean, Coach T, right, the greatest of all time, right? He was a really tough coach, and he made everyone better, right? Like we knew playing for Coach T is tough, right? Not everyone can do it, right? But he made us a closer team. He made us a tougher team, right? Obviously, we were in college and at the pros now, so it's like we can handle, a little bit more. But when you have those, 4 6th graders or 4 5th graders that can take a little bit of tough love that will make them better, right? And it won't break them down and it won't upset them. I think that is also an important skill for a coach to be able to do as well, of like, be able to call them out almost and pull them aside and be like, like I expect more from you. I demand more from you because of the expectations that you've set. I think that's also an important skill for a youth coach to be able to have. And it's tough, I know, because like you don't need to be yelling at kids all the time, but it's not yelling. It's telling the kid that you expect more from them based on the standards that they have set for themselves.
I really love
So
that.
again, it goes back to phrasing it correctly, and not just yelling for the sake of yelling.
This is a complex thing to be a coach. We talk about every episode we add another role to the coach. We've talked about obviously strategist and role model. Now we're talking child psychologist and all of this, and cruise director, right? You got to make sure we're having a lot of fun out there, but at the same time, it's a fantastic point you just make. It can't all be fun and games. Sometimes we have to hold the kids accountable. I love the tough love aspect because it shows you care, right? You care. You have team goals together, and you're going to hold them accountable. So I love that. I think there are some coaches who that's their only note, and I think that can be a problem. But I think that you have to show a nice little balance of, we're in this together. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to take our skills part seriously. And if we're kind of, taking our foot off the gas a little bit, I'm going to call you out on it. But at the end of the day, it's because I care, I love, right? And I want us to get there. And that's a lot. That's a lot for a coach to have to wear all those hats. But, there's great joy in it. You look at I'm in the process of it right now where we're collecting registrations from last year, and I have 100% of my kids back, and I'm thinking to myself, we did a great job with that. We made it so that every kid's coming back, and a few more, word spreading, bring your friends, come on, it's never too late to try the sport. So I think that's just a complex aspect of coaching, but it's a rewarding one.
Yeah, like I coach these 5 7th graders, some of the best kids I've ever met, and they're really good players, right? It's cool to see them sort of shine within the session, but they also want to be coached hard. So it's like when I see them slacking off a little bit and we're ball hunting, instead of me yelling, it's like, boys, like, do you think that like this is actually like a good session right now, or like are we kind of wasting our time? And they're kind of like, yeah, like I'd probably say like we're kind of wasting our time, right? It's not me yelling, but it's me phrasing it to the group of like, this is kind of unacceptable, right? Based on the standard that you guys set for yourself. So there's a way to go about it as opposed to just like, let's go, like, stuff like that where the kids are kind of like, what's he doing? So
it's that dreaded disappointed that you get. It's so much worse than getting yelled at.
Yeah.
Or your coach when they say, I'm just disappointed.
Yep.
Love it. I think, it's helpful for coaches. It's also helpful for parents, right? Like really what you're saying is it's going to take more work as a coach to be both kind and supportive and loving and like, I believe in you, and firm and, holding high standards, right? And holding kids accountable. Like to strike the balance and do both of those is going to be more effort and energy as the coach. And sometimes you might not have it in you to really strike on both of those. But like you mentioned, Coach Joey, if we're only kind, and supportive, and we're not holding people accountable, and that's our MO, that's not good. And the other way around.
Yep.
We don't want to stay up there as well. So it's a great point, Mike.
It's a tough, but it's hard done than said, but you have to find the balance of like, I gotta be supportive, but the kids are here to, to work, and I know these 5 can take it. So you gotta phrase it, as in like I'm doing this because I believe in you and stuff like that, as opposed to just yelling for the sake of yelling. Because we all know that we all know that also doesn't work. That just breaks kids down.
That's right.
And isn't effective.
It's not going to bring out the smile factor. Right?
For sure not.
Before we let you go, I cannot not tell my Tierney story. We got a Denver guy, so I have to very quickly.
Let me hear it.
That I tell all my kids too. So to keep it short and simple, I took the team out to from Massachusetts to the World Lacrosse Championships.
Yeah.
And they played in a youth festival, but there was also an adult festival that included an over 70 division that Bill Tierney played in. And I went down to watch it, and it was one of the games that just changed my whole perspective because they played like a middle school team in terms of how much fun they were having, the trash
Yeah.
talking they were doing. I saw some chest bumps. I mean, they still had serious game. But for me, and this is why I tied it back in, is I kind of had this aha moment where I was like, hey, this is a lifetime sport. And we as youth coaches, we're setting these kids up for potentially decades and decades of being able to enjoy it. And what an awesome responsibility is. So anytime I think of Bill Tierney, I obviously think of, his years at Princeton. I think of his years at Denver. I think he was the first coach to win a national title west of the Mississippi. I always look at this, think of that stern look of on his face every time the camera was on him, like something smelled rotten out there, even though like, coach, you guys.
Yeah.
But I'll always remember the game that he just kind of, him and some friends, that he had put together. They put together 2 teams to go out and play was awesome, and one of those kind of moments for me where I was like, this is really cool. He really is. Awesome. It's awesome.
That is awesome.
Big shout out there to anyone who's taken their lacrosse game into their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we appreciate you. People don't know lacrosse is a lifetime sport. For most, maybe it's not, but for some, you can pull it off if you stick with it. I just want to say thank you, Michael, for joining us and bringing your smile and sharing your perspective around centering, the experience around the smile factor. And just want to thank you, Coach Joey, for being here. Thanks to Mass Youth Lacrosse for powering this On the Fly podcast. And thanks to our listeners out there. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you all soon.
So, Michael, we'll see you at the convention. We're really looking forward to your presentation. And then, Marty, I'll see you as well. We're going to do a podcast there.
Yeah, I am fired up, guys. So thanks for having me on today, and I will see you guys soon.